Hello everyone again. This is Sly from PhotoIn. Welcome to the photo documentation for safety management in construction webinar. We're about a minute away. We'll give it a few more minutes for other attendees to join if anybody's coming in late, and we'll get going. Few housekeeping items. I will record the session so it will be available later, and also this will make the slides available, and please note that there's a questions pane on the right side of your webinar, GoToWebinar module, where feel free to ask questions as we go on. Welcome again, and let's give it another minute or two for anybody who's coming in late to join us. Thanks. Okay, people are slowly joining us more and more. I'll basically give it maybe one more minute. Thanks everybody for the patience, and I will get going here shortly. Again, I will be recording the session. It will be available tomorrow. You'll get it through an email, and also please note that there is a question pane as a part of your GoToWebinar module, where feel free to ask questions as we move along. Okay, so actually I will slowly get started. It's 14:02, and again, we have a recording, so for anybody who ends up missing the beginning, they can get back to it later. Welcome again. Today we'll be talking about photo documentation as applies to safety management in construction. Quickly, I will introduce myself and talk about Todd, who unfortunately is not going to be able to join us today. He just SMS'd me. He had a big emergency that he had to react on right away, but I will point out the comments that Todd was planning to make. We'll talk a little bit to the general about safety, safety management in construction, and then dive into how photo or visual documentation can be leveraged in safety management, talk a little bit about the technology enablers available today, and conclude the webinar at the end with some key takeaways. Feel free to ask questions as we move forward. This session is really for the attendees and the audience. We'll try to stick to the agenda, but really we're here for you and would love to have active discussion as we go forward. So my name is Sly. I'm the CEO and founder of PhotoIn Mobile. Used to run a private equity commercial real estate fund, and that's really how the PhotoIn idea came about. Before that, I was at Capital One, where I was in the risk management and loss management departments, basically a relevance to managing risk. Also held project management professional certification after having done an MBA at University of Georgia. Todd helped me put this webinar together. He's works for DPR Harden Construction as the regional safety manager. He's also a certified safety professional for the past 2 years, before that having been a superintendent for 15 years, and has deep experience in safety management, in training, subcontracting, pre-construction, basically throughout. And before that, he was actually a police officer, which gives him an interesting perspective on how to actually manage safety and how to train and educate the site crews on how to be more safe and how to process any kind of safety incidents. So let's get going with a brief overview of safety in construction. I generally consider to be preaching to the choir, but just to kind of set the stage for what we will be talking about. Obviously, safety costs money if it's not done properly. So from a risk management perspective, obviously we're talking about the frequency of events, and then whatever is the severity of an event, that would be the cause driver from a safety management perspective. And then again, talking about risk management options in terms of managing safety risks from the risk management expertise. You can always not do something, and that way you fully eliminated the risk. You can try to prevent it, mitigate it by reducing the frequency or reducing the severity of the event, and obviously transfer the risk to somebody else by buying insurance. So as we talk about the importance of safety, and obviously that it impacts the bottom line, especially when it's not done appropriately, let's look at some of the numbers and why it's such a complex subject in construction. So basically 6.5 million workers, if not more, or over 250,000 construction sites on an annual basis, almost 25,000 injuries per year. And this is just due to the falls from stairways and ladders, just as a reference point. There's obviously other types of injuries, and the average cost of an injury in construction is $27,000, which is actually twice the amount of the overall industry in U.S. Add the workers' comp, the lost time, and the penalties and fees that come with it. You can see how the numbers can add up pretty quickly, and how managing safety is actually very important from the bottom line aspect as well. So as we talk about the safety, and the point of the webinar is basically to talk about photo documentation. So what does photo documentation have to do with the safety in construction? Well, photo documentation basically reflects visuals. Most of the construction companies really try to capture photos during their safety management procedures. And really what Photo In is going after in this concept of photo documentation is really to put the visuals at the forefront. Pictures worth 1,000 words, but also research shows that brain processes visuals 60,000 times faster than text. So really, to tell the story, much easier to do it with a visual, with some of the commentary, versus having to read the whole story or to hear it from somebody and really get an anecdotal versus visual evidence of what happened, what was the situation, and what needs to be done, maybe even more importantly from an actionability standpoint. There's multiple use cases for photo documentation in terms of safety in construction. So to document issues, to conduct inspections, to resolve disputes, and then to educate and train the site crews on what to pay attention to, how to avoid it, and what to really look for as they're trying to maintain safety of the site and make sure that the crews are doing their part of it. So really about visuals, therefore photos, and really documentation in terms of having the data and the context that goes together with the visual. Considerations, and here I'm going to speak in a little bit for In Todd's name, this is the part where he would comment more from his vast experience. But since we've done these conversations before, really let's talk about the safety culture. That's basically the topic, and the way Todd does his daily job is really he kind of ends up thinking about safety potentially differently than he was back in the day. So he talks about, okay, did you set up everything in a static way? That's one way, and that's what most people do. But there is that dynamic consideration. Site is obviously active. Things change, conditions change. Different people come and go, and really calling out here that safety is not just a static thing, sort of how you've set up things, but really a dynamic consideration. Similarly, his take is that it cannot be the desired outcomes cannot be solely achieved by driving by rules, but really the behavior and education of the site crews should be the of paramount focus, so that the individual on site actually buys into the safety culture, and in that way makes the site safe. And then organizational aspect of that is really to support that culture of safety across and throughout the whole construction process and across the teams. To get that desired behavior to be dynamic and really take care of both individual and organizational. In terms of big construction companies, there's obviously a lot of moving pieces. Executive sponsorship is key. So if the executives don't buy into the concept and do not make safety high enough priority, that type of attitude, let's call it, trickles down to the site worker. And therefore, if the executives are not buying into it, it's hard to expect, or it would be unreasonable to expect for the little guy to really pay attention to it. Because of the changing conditions and how work gets done today, there's obviously a lot of change management to get the desired effects that has to take place, and to get that change and go down the path of changing behaviors and addressing all the different stakeholders and aspects. Feedback loop and integrity of data are paramount. And we'll talk a little bit more about this, where today, when it gets done, data is being captured, but we can ask the question of how correct it is. So Todd has had before, where a given site, when you would just look at the data, what has been captured and reported, it would be no injuries, nothing is going on, everything is okay. But then when you actually go on site, you see that's not necessarily the case. And this is where, again, the photo documentation and visuals can help with that data integrity. And we'll talk more about it. So as we talk about the benefits of having those visuals to really drive the change, organizational change, get the executives to buy into it, so that the behaviors can change and create that safety culture. We can also talk about specific benefits of photo documentation for safety. So when we talk about compliance, it's easier to control when you have the visuals, because it's easier to control. And if the whole site knows that there's going to be visual proof of what actually is happening on site, it will actually help create accountability, so that everybody, again, buys into it from an individual perspective and starts changing their behavior as it concerns safety, and consider it from both static and dynamic, that basically it's an ongoing process. We will also talk about some examples of how photo documentation can be more effective educational tool as well. And in that sense, by improving the compliance control, the accountability of the individuals. We are basically in that risk mitigation aspect, helping prevent things from happening and therefore avoiding injuries and medical costs, and in that way impacting the bottom line. There's other benefits that basically stem from this type of approach. So talking about, for example, legal and insurance costs, it's with visual documentation, it's easier actually to complete audits. If any disputes arise from what goes on site, it's much easier to resolve it with visual proof in terms of processing claims, and instead of describing in words or writing big essays about what happened, again, visuals can help tell the story much more effectively. And then if this whole idea is actually implemented the right way, it creates a safer environment, safer sites. The construction of the general contractor and the construction companies really end up being perceived as safer and as of lower risk for the insurance companies, therefore reducing premiums and getting better underwriting conditions. And on top of all that, also reducing penalties and fees that OSHA might charge. Interesting point of information on a few of these fronts. We've heard that the most recent ABC safety forum here in Atlanta, that OSHA is about to almost double the fines. Basically, they haven't done that, I guess, over the last 20 years. So in 2016, the fines for any violation are going to be much bigger. And again, adding to the motivation of taking care of this and figuring out the processes and driving that culture to avoid the higher penalties that are coming up. Also wanted to mention that on the dispute piece again with Todd, we actually went on Monday just to sort of get a little bit deeper on the topic and have some examples to show. We had a crew came up and basically they were trying to install the railings. They had a homemade doorstop, a rope probably from Home Depot, and the superintendent really had to react because it was obvious that the crew was not trained properly and they didn't have the right tools to get their job done. He actually ended up sending them home, and you can then immediately imagine the delay in the schedule, discussion with the foreman and the owner of the company that crew was working for. Basically, all kinds of downstream impacts from not having or not following, not being compliant to the safety standards of the site. Now, in some instances, that can actually bring up a change order. You know, the crew was sent home. Now they asked to be paid for actually showing up on site. And then if you're in a just he said, she said situation, the question is how is that going to get resolved? But if you actually have visual proof, you can just share that visual evidence with the other side and really resolve any potential dispute much faster, avoid additional costs, and if anything, really make it up from the crew by not following the agreed upon standards. That's the general setup of basically how photo documentation, all the pieces where the impacts, what the real goal is in terms of creating that safety culture, and how photo documentation can help the compliance and really reduce the cost as it relates to safety. To better understand the photo documentation itself, and this is obviously what we at PhotoIN have been working on for years, it's not as easy as just snapping the photo. And superintendents will know this the best. Basically, they are expected to have the photos and the visual evidence, but also to capture that context. And then, and this was very evident on Monday, as you're doing your walk and you stop, and now you have to document what you're seeing, whether it's good or bad. It really takes a lot of time. It's very cumbersome, and the whole capture of photos together with the information is very fragmented with multiple tools. No wonder, and this is something we've also learned, no wonder that a lot of superintendents don't end up doing it as often as it's potentially mandated by the company, because they just don't get to it. Obviously, they are there to run a construction site and build the building, and even though it's a requirement, it ends up being very hard for them. And not only from a capture standpoint, but then when they need to actually deliver the photo documentation back to the organization and back to the system. We hear a lot of the memory sticks, even emailing photos, bringing, even if it's a smartphone, having to bring it to the computer, or if it's a digital camera, using cables and doing the perennial save as, to just put it in the system, and that is even without trying to do any kind of indexing and organization. Obviously, a lot of time wasted. Obviously, safety is not the only one, and again, pointing out the superintendents are really there to run and make sure that everything is on schedule, on budget, and that things are getting done and the project is progressing. And documentation is just one of the pieces. Yet it is very cumbersome, and it is a very inefficient process. It's not just one item, there's actually a whole process that they have to take care of. And then, when even if they do it manually, really, what does the manager, the safety director, or an engineer, and even executives, what are the rest of the stakeholders in the construction project get out of it? Usually a folder full of IMGs with some random letters and numbers. Very hard to find the one item that you need, even if it's just for field reporting, for that education purpose and training. And then imagine, even if there's disputes after the project is done, let's say in terms of warranty, or the insurance comes about and something was not done right, or if there's claims, really, how do you end up leveraging what you know will help you, but it's so cumbersome, and at the end provides limited action. It's sort of the whole point of thinking of photo documentation as a process separate from other ones, and then especially when it comes to safety, driving the understanding that for superintendents it is not that easy, even though it would be valuable for the organization, that the overall process as an end-to-end is actually very cumbersome, and that there is multiple constituents and stakeholders to be considered, and the whole process to be considered when trying to resolve and improve the safety management in construction. That's where basically technology comes into play. And per our agenda, we want to talk a little bit more. And by the way, I should stop more frequently. Feel free to ask questions. Questions, Payne, just shoot it over, and I don't mind addressing them. Or obviously, feel free to keep them for the end, and we can discuss them there. So a little bit more about the photo documentation technology. A lot of you probably already know, and or maybe even already use there, with the mobile and smartphones. Mobile technology for construction has been prolific, to say the least. There's a lot of solutions that are aiming to leverage the fact that most of the superintendents and site workers actually have their own smart devices. The whole trend of bring your own device, bring your own app, and really, we know mobile technology exists, and it's supposed to be making it easier in the field. We'll talk more about what's really required to achieve these, but really calling out that with mobile and also cloud technology, there are more opportunities to actually improve the photo documentation process, and in that way improve how the photo documentation can be leveraged for safety management in construction. So a little bit about cloud. Obviously, anytime, anywhere access. It's up in the cloud. It's not just on the construction site. Collaboration, really sharing documentation and collaborating with even the office workers or other sites and other expertise that might be in the company but not present on site with cloud and mobile. There's more potential and more opportunity to do that. And to add a little bit more color to it and really kind of call out that this technology aspect and even specifically photo documentation is gaining more importance and more visibility, is that the key stakeholders in construction are also taking note. I've been to a few Georgia AGC Technology Committee meetings where at the safety, the meeting really, I would even say maybe a third or 40% of the whole meeting was really discussion. How do you get your photos? How do you get that visual proof for what goes on in safety in terms of doing audits, what kind of technology is being used, and really it is obvious that there's a big desire to leverage these technologies to improve these processes, and again, including photo documentation. We also attended the Willis Risk Management in Construction conference in Nashville about 2 months ago. Even there, obviously, safety was discussed, but again, technology and the visuals and photos. Again, Willis is an insurance company. They were really giving visibility to the whole photo documentation and pointing out to their clients in construction that it's really important to have that it makes things downstream much easier, and that there are specific and hardline costs that can be avoided and reduced by having good photo documentation strategies in place and by leveraging existing technology. Just 2 days ago, we were at a ABC safety forum, and we heard that even ABC National is taking note and trying to help by coming up with a safety reference app, basically, best practices and that type of stuff to help the members better manage safety on construction. So really with the mobile and cloud revolutions, if you will, in technology, everybody's taking note and trying to figure out how to leverage the technology to improve the capture and utilization of the photo documentation and visual documentation to reduce costs and drive what we've discussed already, the creation of that safety culture and accountability, and really a more effective and safe construction site. To that extent, and again, feel free to ask any questions. To that extent, let's talk a little bit about criteria and what to think when looking for a technology solution. Again, pointing out that we as a photo in that this is what we do. Photo documentation is what we do daily for years now. So we've heard a lot, and basically based on all that feedback and all our learnings and understanding from talking to the customer is how we develop the product. But here's to share some general criteria. So it has to be simple and easy to capture the photos in the field. It has to be mobile. That's really now a recognized fact. It's more of a transition and figuring out what devices, what platforms, etc. But everybody already signs up that obviously the mobile in the mobile space is the solution, because construction by definition is not necessarily in already existing environments where there might be an internet connection. That's something to consider, that it can work without internet. The mobile and this simple and easy, really the importance there is, if it's not simple and easy, if it's too hard, the workers on site will not do it. That's as simple as it is, which really creates an opportunity that we have identified and really drive to make things easier and easier for the end user, so that the organization as a whole can actually get that photo documentation and leverage it in the ways we have discussed thus far. Also consider that photo itself, if it's not actionable, and if it doesn't have the context, and if you can't find it, is really not going to do you any good. So in that sense, it's not just about a photo capture. It's really how do you get that data that goes with that photo captured in the same way versus separately. Moving on, and sort of related even to the first point, is the idea of efficiency versus laborious. And this is really where we look at what all is out in the market in terms of doing research and benchmarking and referencing. It cannot be wasting time. So you can't have a solution that requires, let's use an example, 10 different clicks just for one photo. Then you might get one photo from the whole day, just because the superintendent has to do so many clicks and takes so much time. It ends up distracting from the building process, from managing the rest of the site. Basically, if it's too many manual steps, it will limit actually executing on that task. Here's where I would and actually on all these, Todd can, if you end up having some questions that you would like him to address, please pass them on to us, and we'll make sure to address them, and Todd can follow up. We were at this site that we were on Monday. We were in one building out of 5, and that doorstop that, and actually I'm going to go ahead and click a lot. I want to show you how that looks like, and we will come back. So here, excuse me. Here's an example of that doorstop. This is what Todd would do with photo in, basically document what's going on, but then he would actually leverage this photo in either a report fashion or really as just a photo document to actually share either with that crew or with their foreman, or leverage for purposes downstream. Basically later he has a whole library of these photos where he can use them for training and educating workers what's acceptable, what's not. In this case, there is a doorstop, there is a rope, and it looks like they are trying to be safe, but really it's illegal. If something happened, it wouldn't hold up, and it's not compliant to the rules that were set up on this project. And now I'll quickly go back. I apologize for this. Probably should have set it up better. And then the third criteria for selecting a technology solution, manageable. Really, because of so many end users, so many workers involved in the safety management, even if they are not the managers, they are part of the process and of the site. The technology solution has to be manageable from an admin perspective in terms of managing access, configurations, etc. And then in the end, it has to be actionable. You have to get some value out of actually doing that. And really, to get that, you have to be able to easily filter and do a keyword search for the subset or the specific photos that you want to leverage in the specific visual evidence that you want to use for the different purposes that we've already mentioned in terms of documenting issues, resolving disputes, or education, and really driving the safety culture. Again, just a quick reminder: there is a chat. There is a questions pane. Feel free to ask questions, and I'm actually gonna really just quickly check. I don't see any questions popping up, so please do let me know if anything comes up. Really moving on to get a little bit more specific. So from simple and easy, efficient versus laborious and manageable in terms of a general technology solution provider. When it comes to the photos and the photo documentation, we actually have a lot of specific learnings that we wanted to um, share. So it is not just about inspections. That's basically one way or one task in managing safety. There's the idea of individual issues. So don't make me do a whole report of 100 questions. That would be, let's say, a safety audit or a safety walkthrough for one issue. So really, ability to easily capture photos with individual issues, but also for a more holistic, templatable information and photo capture. Calling out pieces on the photo. Sometimes you snap a photo, and if it's the right audience, they might immediately know, oh, okay, yeah, I see that doorstop is not right, etc. But what if you're doing it for training? What if you're doing some kind of analysis, or you trying to communicate to the executives, not to have to do it later? Really, what is the individual that captured and documented the issue, they can point out by annotating on the photo what really is going on there. When we talk about laborious and just having to do all these different clicks and enter the different words for each of the photos, obviously that makes it laborious. So look for features that easily associate photos to the correct project and or category. So let's say it is maybe you have a ranking of different types of injuries or different types of safety risks. Maybe it's low, medium, high. So, and then you want to do analysis. So how do you associate it with that category? How is that done for the photos so that you can leverage it in the analysis later as well? And like I've already mentioned a bunch of times, not having to enter for each photo. So now I'm doing a walk, or I'm going to do a walk, but only document things that are out of the ordinary, and I have taken a photo and knows what project I'm on and what I'm doing and who I am. Don't make the user have to do that for every single photo. Have an easier way to provide him with the ability to again capture photos and data together. And again, now we're moving into how do I use the photos later. So there has to be a feature that basically makes it easier to reference those photos and find them later. We've heard numerous times about, yes, if I want something, I go into a folder, there's 1,000 photos, and I sit there for an hour and a half clicking through, and I'm thinking, oh, maybe it's this one, but how do I know? How do I reference that photo to the piece that I'm actually looking for? So we got to make it easier for the end users in the office to actually find the right photos that they want to use. Then it's not just on the phone, not just on the device, but actually across the customer systems. And customer in this case is Photo In Customer. Basically, the construction business needs to, they own all those observations, and they need all that data, including the visual data, to actually be able to analyze and optimize the process and to actually work in conjunction with already existing systems in place that a construction company might be using. And of course, enable collaboration that, again, from an actionability standpoint, that you can use this visual evidence, visual documentation to collaborate with others, whether they be in the office or out there on site with their coworkers. Before I sort of start wrapping it up nicely, I wanted to see if there's any questions. Again, the GoToWebinar has a pane for questions. So if anybody would like us to discuss anything here towards the end, feel free to raise them up and we'll try to address them. And again, if you rather do that post hoc after the presentation, please don't hesitate to reach out. Slowly wrapping it up, and again, I'll keep reminding everybody if there's any questions. So that safety, and we all know safety management is extremely important. It impacts the bottom line directly. It is an organization-wide topic. It's not just for the safety directors or safety managers. Really, everybody should be safe. Individual workers, management, and the executives need to support it in order to create really a culture of safety rather than just treat it as just one of those, just another process to be taken care of. Josh, I see you asked a question now. I'm just, pardon me while I figure out how to get to the questions pane. Okay. Go to webinar. Josh, go to webinar is not cooperating. I'm clicking on a go to questions pane, but it's not giving me, it's not opening it up for me. So, Josh, I will reach out after the presentation and make sure I end up addressing your question. I apologize for that. Yeah, here's where the technology doesn't end up cooperating the way it should. So again, apologies, Josh, but I will follow up and we can address your question. Maybe try the chat down on the bottom. I can definitely see that. I don't know what happened to the questions pane. And while we resolve that, I'll continue basically for the rest of the attendees. Takeaways or conclusions about key benefits of photo documentation as a safety management tool, improving that field to office communication and field communication in general, keeping everybody accountable. So basically knowing that there's a visual evidence of what's going on, individuals should be more mindful of safety. And then if you have all that well organized and well put together photo documentation, you'll be able to resolve disputes either during the project or after the project, or anything that might end up going into the legal realm or the insurance realm. And if you're resolving it more effectively and sooner, obviously related costs are reduced. There is technology out there available. Choose carefully. So it's not about just proclamations of, we do safety. Make sure that it's easy enough and user centric so that you actually get the benefit out of the technology, because you'll make it easier for superintendents, foremen, and the site crews to actually use it and create that value that you're looking for. And there I will stop and try to get to the question pane again before I Okay, sounds like there's no other questions, so everybody's going to get a follow-up email with a link to the recording. We will also share the presentation, and really we put ourselves at your disposal for any other questions that you might have regarding how to get your photo documentation solution effective for your safety management on site. Thank you very much for joining us, making the time, and again, feel free to reach out with any additional questions. Thank you.